Welcome to Tech Blueprint, a window that lets you know the latest technology news in the world. The rapid development of the memory chip industry in recent years has come to an abrupt halt. Korean giants have begun to retreat, and even the industry leader Samsung has had to bow its head and reduce production. However, in this cold wave, Chinese manufacturers have done the opposite. To sum it up in one sentence, you reduce production, I increase production, and double it directly. What is the mystery behind this contrast? In January 2025, the cold wave in the memory chip industry intensified. The price of NAND flash was completely out of control, like an avalanche in the past year. The price has fallen by more than 50%. According to market institutions' forecasts, it may fall another 10% to 15% in the first quarter of this year. Such a situation is obviously an unbearable burden for Samsung and SK hynix. The two Korean giants have announced production cuts, and the range is as high as 30%. The logic of production cuts is simple: oversupply, inventory explosion, price collapse, and continued production means losing money. But surprisingly, Chinese manufacturers pressed the accelerator in the cold wave. Not only did they not reduce production, but they even doubled their production capacity directly. By the end of 2025, Chinese manufacturers are expected to increase their share of the global memory chip market from 5% to 10%. It seems that some people are shivering in the cold winter, while others are starting to build roads in the heavy snow. Why are Samsung and SK hynix reducing production? The price plunge of NAND flash is the biggest trigger. In the past 2024, this market was really bleeding. Prices fell wildly throughout the year, and in the fourth quarter alone, they fell 38%, directly turning the profit and loss statements of Korean manufacturers into a disaster movie. What's worse, this decline showed no signs of stopping in early 2025. Why did it fall so hard? In fact, it's just one word: more. In the past few years, the memory chip industry has experienced a wave of capacity expansion, but market demand has not kept up. Inventories are piling up, and prices naturally fall straight down. In order to stop this bleeding state, Samsung and SK hynix have no choice but to reduce production, hoping to reduce supply to ease price pressure. This time, the production reduction of Samsung and SK hynix is not small, reaching 30%. What does this mean? For the global memory chip market, Korean manufacturers are the absolute boss. A 30% reduction in production is equivalent to a direct cut of a large part of the global supply. This operation obviously hopes to use less production in exchange for stable prices. But what is puzzling is why Chinese manufacturers choose to increase production at this time and double it directly. Isn't this a suicidal expansion in the cold winter? In fact, from another perspective, the logic of Chinese manufacturers is very clear. First, the current market share of Chinese manufacturers is too low. Although China is one of the world's largest memory chip consumer markets, the market share of domestic chips is only a pitiful 5%. In other words, most of the demand has to rely on imports. This situation is obviously unfavorable for China. The purpose of increasing production is very clear, that is, to increase domestic self-sufficiency and reduce external dependence. Secondly, memory chips are a typical cyclical industry. There is a famous saying in the industry: expand production at lows and harvest at peaks. Samsung is the originator of this set of operations. Back then, Samsung expanded production against the trend during the industry's low period, defeated many competitors with low prices, and finally became the absolute overlord of the global memory chip industry. Now, Chinese manufacturers are just repeating the rules of the game. More importantly, Chinese manufacturers have an advantage that others do not have: low cost. Whether it is the cost of production or the strength of government support, the competitiveness of Chinese manufacturers should not be underestimated. In the price war, Chinese manufacturers obviously have more chips. As Chinese manufacturers increase production, price wars are almost inevitable. For Samsung and SK Hynix, this is undoubtedly adding insult to injury. Although production cuts can ease inventory pressure, facing the low price impact of Chinese manufacturers, the market share of Korean manufacturers is likely to be further eroded. Some people may ask, does this price war also hurt Chinese manufacturers themselves? The answer is yes, but the key is that Chinese manufacturers have a low starting point, a small market share, and a stronger ability to resist risks. For Korean manufacturers, the higher the position, the more painful it is. In the long run, this price war may reshape the pattern of the global memory chip industry. If Chinese manufacturers can gain a foothold in this cold wave, it is almost inevitable that their market share will increase in the future. For Samsung and SK Hynix, this cold wave may become a big test. In fact, there are deeper considerations behind the Chinese manufacturers' expansion against the trend. Although the memory chip industry is highly cyclical, it is still a growth industry in the long run. With the rapid development of emerging technologies such as 5G, artificial intelligence, and the Internet of Things, the demand for memory chips will only grow. For China, memory chips are not only an industrial issue, but also a strategic issue. Long-term dependence on imports is obviously not a safe option. Improving domestic self-sufficiency can not only meet domestic demand, but also gain more initiative in the international market. More importantly, the rise of Chinese manufacturers is not isolated. In recent years, China's investment and layout in the semiconductor field can be said to be all-round. From chip design to manufacturing, to packaging and testing, China is forming a complete industrial chain. This full-chain development model is obviously the confidence of Chinese manufacturers. For Samsung and SK Hynix, the pressure brought by this cold wave is obviously huge. Production cuts are only temporary self-help measures, but whether they can really overcome the difficulties depends on subsequent market changes. The bigger problem is that the rise of Chinese manufacturers has become an existence that cannot be ignored. The price war is just the beginning, and the competition in the future will be more intense. For Korean giants, how to maintain their advantage in this competition will be a long-term challenge. The cold wave in the memory chip industry has not made everyone retreat. Some are reducing production, while others are expanding production. The choices made in the cold winter are actually a gamble on the future. Some people say that expansion in the trough often determines who can laugh louder in the future peak. As for who is the winner of this ice and fire contest, it may take a few years to give an answer.